And we are live here to chat about the finale of Abbott Elementary, the season finale, not the series finale. Get excited about that. Tonight's episode of The Flash and a bunch of other things. And everybody will be pleased to know that I pushed the live button and I tweeted the tweet. And for once, tech is working now. Let's just ignore the fact that it started 10 minutes late because tech wasn't working for me before. It's fine. It's fine. We're all fine. And by we, I mean myself and Kate and Carey. So let's get them up here through a little spin of TV magic. Kate and Carey, how are you guys tonight?
Doing fantastic.
Pretty good, yeah.
Fantastic. Love to hear it. Now, Kate, you're down there, and I'm going to move you up here because for once, for the first time in who knows how many months, I'm actually going to correctly start with the news. And anytime, by the way, in the last couple months that you've seen me correctly start with the news, just know there was some tech issue prior and we actually restarted and I actually did it wrong the first time. Okay, that's all. Now, let's move Kate around and talk us through the news this week. What's going on?
Well, there wasn't much news I caught. There was, if you were on Twitter at all, there was a lot of controversy about Killing Eve. We'll just leave it there.
I am occasionally on Twitter, and I also watch Killing Eve and am fully immersed in the Easter crack theory whole thing. I know it's not true, but the part of me that believes in fairies and whatever is oh no, of course she's gonna rise on Easter. Of course she is. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't watched since season 1 just because I haven't had the opportunity, and I've been wanting to catch back up, and I saw the drama at first and the even more conspiracy theories, and once you start getting into conspiracy theories with television, that's my homing beacon. So then I caught wind of it and I immediately was this is great. The other news that I heard that's not really related to me, but I will go ahead and kind of re-mention it, is I did see that your fave, Abbott Elementary, got renewed and is now 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Kate, it's literally so good. I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it because it's going to be my little pitch thing later, but just know it's literally so good. Okay, continue. Sorry.
And then I think this was actually a little while ago. We haven't really had an opportunity to talk about it. Our deep love of Bridgerton. There's a Queen Charlotte spinoff coming in some time, ambiguous, but that's been announced, and some of the casting has been announced, and it looks great. I'm very excited. They do have a Violet, I think, and a Charlotte, and I think even a Lady Cranberry cast, which is honestly already half the show for me anyway, so that's great. And then I mentioned it a few weeks ago, but the Look Back Diaries, the Lizzie Bennet rewatch series with Ashley Clements, started this week. So I haven't had a chance to watch them. I just randomly thought about that 20 minutes ago, and I looked it up, and they have 2 episodes out. So I am very excited to go back and watch those again.
That sounds fantastic. I have one tiny piece of news that might be speculation. I don't know if we really consider this news so much as it is reading in between the lines of an obscure interview. But I read that Simone Ashley in an interview said that she and John of Bridgerton season 2, Simone Ashley, who plays Kate Sharma, said that she and Jonathan are passing the reins to Nicola and Luke, which is Colin and Penelope. So in my mind, that means that it's confirmed that Colin and Penelope are season 3. And that's newsworthy to me because they are book 4. However, it is also speculation. And I did not check my sources or actually read the interview. I read a screenshot in a tweet that was retweeting another tweet. So very big speculative energy.
Yeah, I saw that in passing earlier today as well, and I can also just make the counter argument that like they don't have Sophie or whoever they're gonna if they keep that romance, if they change it, like a lot of people think they might, they don't have the love interest cast or announced yet. So obviously, it'd be more obvious to say two well-known, well-loved actors already over the one that we also don't know his love interest. So to me, it's just more for marketing or like a I'm friends with them. I'm gonna say their names, and I like the guy that plays Benedict too, but like their romance is obviously coming up eventually. That's all I would have to say. Like I wouldn't say that as confirmation, just as like a maybe.
Speaking of casting Sophie, I have some ideas, and it doesn't really fit in the news segment, but I can't be stopped. Here are three possible castings for Sophie. Option number one, and this is one I know a lot of people have talked about, and under no circumstances will this occur because she is getting Marvel money, and that is Florence Pugh. I think
Oh yeah, she'd be
visually she looks
great and
exactly like
never.
how, yes, she looks exactly like how the book describes Sophie, but she's also, like this is Black Widow's little sister, right? This is somebody who's going to have some spunk and interest and all of that. So that's option number one out of three. Option number two, a hard left turn, looking about as different as is humanly possible, but could give like good scullery maid vibes, I feel, because she is somebody who uniquely rides the line between like looking old versus looking young, looking high class versus looking low class, is Isabel
I know where you're
Furman.
going. Oh, it's not where I thought you were going. Okay.
Who did you think I was going to say?
I thought you were going to pull out Anya Taylor Joy.
God, I wish, but like, let me not be too pie in the sky. Isabel Furman played like the really evil girl on Hunger Games. She played the evil girl on
Mm-hmm.
Esther. She's played a lot of evil girls, if I'm being honest. But what she has going for her, as evidence in Esther, is she can do this like age ambiguous thing that I think will work out well for the weird casting going on Bridgerton. And she very visibly can like ride the line between like, depending on how you style her, she can look like a scullery maid versus looking high. You get what I'm saying. Anyways, she's not blonde and she's not like pale skin, blue eyes, or any of those things, but like, who cares? Third option, and this one, I feel as if this would be like you already have all these theories that, well, we all collectively have all these theories that Benedict is bi, right? This option would bring bi energy to Sophie as well, which PEMDAS equals everything out, right? Right, that's how it works. Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
Jodie Comer, speaking of Killing Eve, who currently plays Villanelle, she looks like
I love
Sophie.
you, but I love you, but say that again for me. I'm going to play the Tupperware game. Say that name again for me, please.
Jodie Comer, am I saying it wrong?
Yes.
What is it? Is it corner?
Comer.
Comer.
Comer. There's one R.
Listen, English is like so hard, guys. Like there's just like so many letters. Anyways,
I'll look it up. I could be wrong here, but I've only ever heard it Jodie Comer.
statistically, I'm like so likely to be wrong. It's almost not working. It's not, almost not worth looking up. While you do
There's
that,
only one R.
well, who here is surprised that Kate is right and I'm wrong? I, for one, am not surprised. Okay, I'm going to do a little swap out and move on to another area of my mild expertise. Carey, please join me up here and talk to me about tonight's episode of The Flash, which I want to hate on, but I actually loved, except for the ending. What did you think? Did you watch it?
I did.
Okay,
I'm
good.
assuming you're talking about Death Storm.
Death Storm,
Terrible. I'm assuming.
Firestorm. Yes.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's a proper DC character name, but Death Storm. All right, whatever. Interestingly enough, about this episode, I thought about you as I was, particularly as we saw sort of the quote unquote resolution with Ronnie and Caitlin. because in the previous episode, it was essentially Barry who was fighting against the team, trying to get them to see what it was that he wanted to do. And he was resolute in his plans, and everyone was like, no, that can't be, that can't be, that can't be. In this episode, we had Caitlin in the role of Barry, basically her against the entire team. The only difference, obviously, was that in the last episode, it would turn out that Barry was right. And of course, in this episode, it turns out that Barry was right, but it also meant that Caitlin was wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought that that was particularly interesting. I thought that you would find that interesting, I guess is probably what I would say. Overall,
Here's why I'm enraged. Okay. Why does she have to be wrong? They could have just written this differently. Okay. They could have given her a love interest. They could have brought back her love interest, I guess I could say, and given her a nice romantic moment and had them run off to go spend a couple weeks at that whatever bed and breakfast by the seafood whatever place, which would have been perfect timing because the girl's about to pop. Like, she's going on maternity leave any day now. Like, you need an opportunity to write her off a couple episodes anyways. Why can't you write her off happy rather than sad? Like, if you're going to so clearly parallel a Barry situation, which I appreciated, like I really did appreciate this, like her against the team thing and her doing the science. And then I also appreciated like Killer Frost kind of like taking her side ultimately and like giving her the thing to use. Like, she deserved the chance to try that out. You know what I mean? If you're going to give that parallel, why does she get everything except the parallel of Barry being right at the end? Why can't she be right? It just feels unkind.
You're right, but they couldn't have her be right because of the because of the antagonist, right? Because of who's involved. Because if she got quote unquote the happy ending, then it's like, okay, who is our villain going to be, right? And so that would have had them stuck, and they had to not give her the happy ending. I mean, you can see that a mile away because I don't know how many episodes they have this season, but we're obviously not at the end, right? So it can't
Right.
be, hey, here's your happy ending, and
I'll do some
also
quick lookups.
by the way, our main villain is no longer, right? So what do we do now? Um, to be honest, it probably would have been more interesting again if the previous episode, if Barry turned out to be wrong. I think that would have been a better sort of narrative to continue to progress. But here, it just couldn't be. And
My TV
I guess
tracking app did not immediately give me the number of episodes, so we search on, but I'm still listening.
okay. The I don't know if it's the worst part about it, but essentially it took Caitlin all this time to get to a point where she could, feel comfortable dating someone. Apparently found someone who was really, really good to her, and then to basically torpedo that relationship in favor of this failed one. That seems pretty, pretty damning is not the right word, but it basically just craps all over her character. It's like she can never be happy, right?
It's really frustrating that like the one specific way in which she can never be happy is romantically. But we have, seen, like, we can all think back to, TV series, movie series, book series, where somebody is like very unlucky in love, whether it's done in a comedic way or a tragic way or whatever. We've seen male characters and female characters where they leave like a string of, destroyed relationships behind them. I'll give an example in a very different genre. The TV series 24. It's one I often cite in relation to DC CW shows because I think DC CW shows often reference like early 2000s like action TV shows. I don't know if that's just like what the writers are familiar with, but I see a lot of parallels. In the TV show 24, you had, your like Jack Bauer character who is very similar to your, Walker, Texas Ranger type of character. And consequently, he has no successful relationship. So it's like every season there's like a new love interest and she dies or she turns evil or whatever. And they make that unsuccessful. However, they make him successful in every other way. He gets the bad guy. He escapes the torture. He is the smartest. He is the strong. He is whatever. So to avoid dogging on a character, you can make them successful in other ways. And I think for a character like Caitlin slash Frost, if it was that romance was like her one thing and it was like almost comedic that like, oh, this hot brilliant scientist like can never, like she's just got like really terrible, taste in men, or always goes for the villains, or has all this tragic whatever, but she was successful in every other way, I think it would be so much more balanced. But she's not, and it's very frustrating. So on a Caitlyn centric episode, which we had tonight, and it was also kind of last week, I think they're kind of not front loading or back loading, mid loading her presence on this season, because again, she's gonna disappear a bit towards the end of this season as she gets very pregnant. Like in these Caitlyn centric times, this is a time where you could let her shine, and you're choosing not to, and it's very frustrating. She does great.
Before this episode started, I sort of asked myself, because it's what I always do when I'm involved in the story, and my question always is, what is the purpose of this story? Who is the audience for? Or I guess who do the writers believe is the audience for it? And for The Flash, it just sort of feels like they're doing a show, but it just doesn't seem to have a definitive sort of purpose to it or an audience. Because you watch Superman and Lois, it's sort of like a family drama with superhero type stuff in it. Arrow was sort of like a gritty sort of action show with elements of like drama and later romance to it, right? But the question I have for The Flash is, who is it for? What story is it trying to tell? What are they trying to do? And I haven't had a good answer for that question.
I'm interrupting, but I have an answer.
Go ahead.
Their answer, the answer that I think they're trying to go for, or they were trying to go for, is romance forward. He's the paragon of love. This is the least dark and gritty show. This is the show that is extremely ship-centric. This is all about Barry and Iris. They are supposed to be the gold standard of romance for all this. This is the show that they believe all of the shippers, right, to use 2016 terminology, would be all over. And they have shown no understanding of what we actually want in a romance. And it's not because it's too dark or too light, by the way, because if you look at a show like Legends of Tomorrow, which does not take itself too seriously, is very light, is very comedic, is a very like irreverent and flippant in some ways, they've managed to capture romance multiple times throughout multiple incarnations and multiple seasons, to where somebody who doesn't keep up with it, like me, still knows that some of the best ships are on Legends of Tomorrow. Some of the best romantic plot lines are on Legends of Tomorrow. And that's not even what they were supposed to be about. Legends of Tomorrow was supposed to be the ensemble show, the character forge show, the fun, crazy moments of like, what if your favorite character who's no longer on whatever show got to do some crazy whatever, right? But they've been able to capture that within a comedic environment. And Flash, I think, was supposed to sit in between. Flash was supposed to be dark enough to be analogous to Arrow, in that there's this continuous storyline that's not too irreverent, and you're supposed to take it a little bit seriously, but it's light enough to where we can get happy endings and stuff with romance. No pun-ish intended, because certainly there's not that kind of happy ending on this show. But like just there's a married couple, right, that like gets together and stays together and has vow renewals and flowers and lacy dresses and everybody's pretty. But that's not quite enough. That's so close. Like that's almost enough. It's so close to it. But that is my long answer of who I think they're trying to go for. But all of those viewers, like the diehard shipper viewers from like 2015 to 2017, long gone, not watching this franchise anymore.
Certainly. And I mean, I think I counted, but it was probably about 46 minutes like into the runtime of the episode before Barry had on the Flash suit. Like, we're watching the Flash. He's not the Flash. Hadn't been the Flash all episode. And so someone came up to me and said, "Hey, tell me what the Flash is about this season." I got a whole bunch of nothing.
Right.
Again, like you said, it's supposed to be about this love story, but the execution has just been underwhelming to say the very least. I mean, you got the two leads and they're hardly in any scenes together. It's just really strange and clunky. Nobody has a relationship apparently that seems to work. I mean, you don't even see Joe and Cecile together. Um, it just feels like they're just going through the motions, and that's not a very good thing.
They're out of touch. You mentioned Joe and Cecile. They're out of touch, the writers or creators or powers that be, on what creates a meaningful romantic moment. And I'll give you an example. In tonight's episode, you had them all kind of standing in a circle and they were talking about games because they had mentioned Dungeons and Dragons, and of course, because it's the only character trait that they give Chester, but they mention Dungeons and Dragons in relation to him and they have him nerding out, whatever. And they have this cute moment, what would be a cute moment between Cecile and Joe, where he's like, "What happened to chess or checkers?" And she's like, "Or dominoes." And Allegra's like, "Okay, Grandpa," right? That was a cute moment. It was a fun moment, brief. What could have made it a cute and romantic moment or a cute and touching moment for Joe and Cecile is if Joe and Cecile were closer to each other during that. If he had turned to her to say, specifically to her, he's not trying to make this joke to all the kids. He specifically was like, "What happened to chess or checkers?" And she had kind of nudged him and been like, "Oh, or dominoes," and given a, like kind of like an inside joke, flirty smile, like maybe they play dominoes together. You would start to believe it. That establishes history. Takes no extra time to do it. Takes no extra camera work to do it. You just have to show them do a little bit of like old married couple flirting, a little bit of glancing up, a little bit of difference in blocking, have them closer together. And that's how you start to create romance. That's how you establish there's people on this show that love each other. And that buys you audience awareness such that if you ever put Joe or Cecile in danger, or as is going to happen at the end of the season, if you ever write Joe out of this show, we care. We care because we see it through the eyes of Cecile and not just because he's the only adult holding the show together. But as was announced by Comic Book Resources earlier today, he's exiting the show. I don't know who else may have announced that as well. He's exiting the show after this season. And because they have sidelined him in so many ways, we as viewers only care because he's one of our only moments of sanity each episode. We're not seeing how the other characters love him. It's very unfortunate.
Yeah. I know you said it perfectly, and you're absolutely right. And even beyond that, what they could have gotten right with that, at the end, you got this quote unquote death storm who's got like the body of Ronnie Raymond. And the question is like, well, okay, what does he do now? Because when we first saw this quote unquote heat smoke monster, he was killing people instantly. Then as episodes went on, okay, it took him time to start killing people. And he was killing people over grief. And now he has like a body or a host or whatever. So like, now what is it going to do other than be something that the team has to deal with? I don't know. I don't know. It's just there, and I continue to watch. It's kind of disappointing after like what they felt like they wanted to do at the very start of the season with the 5 episode arc. It felt like it was going to be grand, like this was going to mean something, but we've gotten into the quote unquote regular episodes of the show and it just doesn't feel like it means anything. That's my disappointment.
I feel that. I am okay. We are live, but I am realizing this might be streaming to a different place. This is just streaming to this place that's saying this is streaming, this is recording, but this is streaming to a specific live stream. I don't know why Stage 10 did this instead of the live stream that is pre-set up for this. I really don't know why. Which is totally fine. I'm just going to have to like retitle it and re-thumbnail it after. And I'll
It's
send.
in the ether.
It is in the ether. It is just a random live stream going towards my channel instead of directing it to the specific one that I titled. But that's okay. As such, this is while we are live now, you can essentially treat this as if we are recording. With that being said, we'll chug right along regardless. Kate, I'm going to swap you out because if I recall, you mentioned you might be dabbling into a new show this week that you might want to pitch to us. Did you?
I did. I watched the first 2 episodes.
Okay. So please share with us what that is and whether you recommend it so far.
I started Moon Knight. So we've mentioned it a couple times here, but we've focused on other things. So we didn't really get a chance to watch it yet. But I watched the first 2 episodes. The 3rd episode dropped today, so I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. But it follows this guy named Steven, who Oscar Isaac plays Steven, who has, assumably for years now, been experiencing intense bouts of like sleepwalking, and he's like missing parts of his time, and he's just having a really hard time keeping track of like where he's going. And he takes some pretty drastic maneuvers to kind of make sure he like knows where he is.
Okay.
But continually throughout the pilot, the first episode, it just gets more and more intense of him not knowing how he turns up places. So at one point I don't even really know what country he ends up in, but it's not London where he lives. And he is basically dropped in the middle of this situation where he's being shot at. And he's like, well, what's going on? And it's revealed, and it's pretty clearly revealed that he has some form of dissociative disorder. And I'm uninformed enough to make a claim of understanding any of it truly. But essentially, he cohabits the body with another man called Mark Spector, who is an American man who was a like mercenary, and then he is also involved in this massive like Egyptian god thing where so he is considered an avatar of one specific god, and there's other gods and their avatars that are like against the moon god, so that's him. It's very interesting. It's completely different from like a lot of superhero stuff, but with all the fantasy stuff I watch, this is also like an odd like amalgamation of the stuff. It's really interesting, and the great part is both characters that that he essentially is, both Mark and Steven, are completely different characters. And I wouldn't say this now that I've watched the first 2 episodes, but maybe the first 10 minutes of the show very much has the vibe of watching Fitz from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where during his time trying to struggle with him being Fitz and Leopold.
Miss him.
Being like, miss him dearly. Like completely like frazzled, like just trying to do the right thing. What's going on? And like geeky and obsessive about the things he likes and enjoys. And then flip side, it's like brutal killer. And it's really interesting to watch how that's like playing out. I have theories, obviously, but they're not like big spanning things. It's more of just like within like the first 10 minutes, I'm like, I am suspicious about this phone call and things like that. I'm really interested in it. There's hints of a romance that seem really good. I'm interested, and I'm excited to watch the rest of it. There is only going to be 6 episodes this season, though, and I don't know if they're going to have multiple seasons.
And that is on Disney Plus. Is that right?
Yes.
Carey, have you had a chance to watch any of that?
I have not yet. And you said this is the 3rd episode this week, right? Or
yeah, it dropped today, so you can watch all 3 today.
Okay. Yeah, I obviously I plan to watch it. I have not seen it yet. I'm trying to decide if I want to watch it, like catch up with it and then watch it each week, or just like binge it like on a weekend. So do you from what you've seen, did you binge it or have you watched it week to week? or did you watch them
I
two
watched
this
the
week?
first. I watched the 2 episodes back to back, and then I
Okay.
stopped because I had to go do something. So I haven't watched the third episode. So far, I think it's a pretty good binge show. There's not a lot of time for you to have to worry about theorizing that could change, but I, it kind of either way seems good to me.
Let me ask you this question: when he sort of takes on whichever persona that he does, is there essentially a physical cue that the viewer gets? Um, is there like a visual, like from the camera type cue, or how do you sort of take that in?
Um, so I mean, the first episode is primarily through the perspective of Steven, so the nerdy sales clerk that works at a museum, and there is physical cues in the sense of like when we all joke about how can you tell it's not Superman? It's more than the glasses. It's how he holds himself. It's like how he kind of bumbles through the room versus like marching through something because he has like physical command. There is that differentiation, and then there's also the fact that there's also suits, so that Mark doesn't always wear the suit, but there is a suit, like a superhero suit. There's actually two superhero suits. That's complicated, but it's a really
Toy
funny
sales.
in yeah, like joke.
I have a question. What genre would you describe it as?
It's weirdly like a little bit horror, a little bit like your typical. It has very much strong still like Marvel vibes of like action superhero stuff. But it leans farther into like the Doctor Strange like horror aspects of the Marvelverse. And it has a good bit of humor because of him being the bumbling, awkward guy and him experiencing something that he just doesn't know how to explain to other people. So it has a little bit of comedy, but I would say probably like that Doctor Strange without that kind of magic type vibe.
I mean, you had me at the Doctor Strange part. We're all kind of having to gear up and muster up the liking for Doctor Strange these days, even though I'm calling it the Scarlet Witch movie. Which, by the way, Kate and I have tickets to it already. I'm so excited. I will also let you know. I know everybody was worried. We were all so worried. I've done some behind the scenes stream mixing magic, and we are now all fixed. No live lost. Pun intended. We have our live stream going under the correct title and the correct link, and it is as if that has always been the case. Thank you so much for listening to my technical woes. More on this story at 11, certainly from now until Kingdom Come, probably. Okay. I'm sold on Moon Knight. I think you guys will be sold on Abbott Elementary. And that's why I chose to pitch that instead of the other option, which was the Ultimatum. So let's talk Abbott Elementary instead. Carey, are you watching Abbott Elementary?
I am not watching Abbott Elementary, but
That is a
sell me on it.
tragedy. Sheer tragedy. Okay, let me tell you about Abbott Elementary. I think while the title is great, the title undersells it. Because when you hear the term Abbott Elementary, I'm assuming that you, like me, are just thinking like a story about an elementary school, right? Like a lot of kids and a lot of kid humor, and maybe it's like a hybrid family show where you might be watching for some little kid characters and then you might be watching for some adult characters. Is that what you guys were thinking?
Saved by the Bell upper crust.
Sure. So none of the kid characters are like main or even side characters. Like you don't even have to remember their names. Truly, I don't. And they're going to get swapped out every season. This is all about the grown-ups. It's so good at capturing so many different grown-ups personalities. You have the flippant, doesn't take anything seriously, doesn't do her job, is always on TikTok character. You have the gung-ho new teacher who thinks he's going to be like, you know, out of a Sandra Bullock movie and save these kids type of vibe. You have the teacher who's like nearing retirement, church lady, has a certain way that everything's being done. You have the main character, Janine, who's sort of like mommy issues character, wants to be gold star A+. You have the teacher who actually wanted to be a principal. You have the teacher who's giving very much like South Philly, like she's part of the Irish mob type of thing. Every kind of like character you can think of, plus you know, there's also janitors, librarians, whatever. They all resonate so much such that you could pluck them out of a school setting. Let's say they had one of those like alternate universe things. You could pluck them out of a school setting and drop them in a law firm or in an engineering lab or in a whatever, and you're still going to be like capturing like really interesting, unique characters. Number two, fantastic romance. And throughout, like, they do the typical season 1 thing where like where they meet each other, they're not single, so they like do not dabble in like affair vibes. There's none of that, but like all the build up to romance that you would want from characters who aren't actually like dating each other. You have him being overly concerned for her well-being. You have, oh, they don't really like this food, but they agree to eat this food just because they wanted to like hang out with the other person longer. You have them like genuinely admiring the other person. You have them genuinely like laughing at the other person. It's so fantastic. Plus, there's a scene that invented romance, and I'm going to explain it to you. So she rushed, Kate, listen, it's so good. So she rushes out of the building because she feels very like isolated. There was like a team meeting where she was basically like getting made fun of. So she rushes out of the building, and this like a, you know, kind of crappy school building. There's like not much of an overhang for her to be out of. So she rushes out into the sidewalk. Immediately, he rushes out afterwards, and you get this just split second clip, right? Of like, just think of the camera angles involved in this. You see her rushing out of a room, and then you see her like outside, like walking out into the overhang. You see him rushing out after her. So he rushes out of the room. But before you get the clip of him walking out the door into the overhang to like go check out after her, you get like 2 seconds of a view from the side of the hall where he walks towards the door and without blinking, looking down, or missing a beat, grabs an umbrella, walks out the door, immediately opens overhead. He's not even standing under it very much. He's not even that close to her. It's not a proximity thing. It's that immediately before she's out in the rain for more than 2 seconds, he's there like holding it over her, making sure her hair doesn't get wet. It's so sweet. It's so meaningful. It's so obviously written by somebody who cares about these characters. It's wonderful. It'll make you laugh more than it'll make you cry. This isn't like some touchy, feel good, let's save these poor kids type of like save your narrative type of thing. Watch it. It's going to be this little bit of sunshine in your week where you're just going to be like, oh, I can smile again. Life isn't a veil of tears. Thank you.
The look was because I remember there being a whole comment, like Twitter thread about that scene, and me unknowingly going, Little Women?
It's so good. And I'm also like, I'm not like qualified to speak on like, you know, issues from cultures that aren't mine, so I like can't be somebody to like claim this or read too much into it. But a lot of the characters, including the 2 characters that I just described, are Black, and I know that a lot of Black women were posting on Twitter afterwards that was particularly meaningful because keeping your hair dry, you know, when you have a long-term style is really important. So that's something that like 2 Black characters would know about each other, so that adds an extra level of romance, which I thought was very sweet. It's so good. Watch the show. Thank you.
Is this guy's name Ted Mosby?
No, is that the guy from the like football show?
No, How I Met Your Mother,
Oh,
the
that's Ted
yellow umbrella.
Lasso. I was thinking of Ted Lasso. Oh, from How I Met Your. I never watched How I Met Your Mother.
I heard
Oh, that
Mosby,
hurts.
and I just
That hurts.
immediately thought of the Sweet Life Hunt with Zach and Cody.
Oh, Mr. Mosby. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know both of those
I was like,
references, and I
huh?
don't know How I Met Your Mother. You know, when
Oh,
How I
that
Met Your Mother was in its final season, I almost started watching it because everybody was like gung ho about some romance and How I Met Your Mother. And then, like, literally the day I was going to start watching it, everybody was screaming on Twitter about how they like destroyed the romance. And I was like, I'm going to watch something else instead.
yeah. I don't want to get into that. It still hurts.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
But that shows where I fell in love with Kristen Milioti. So there's that.
Is she on the Abbott cast? I only know like Quinta, and that's the only like name I know so far.
No, she's in Made for Love, the HBO show that I've been watching. I've actually finally finished the first season.
Ooh, how was it?
It, it's a lot, man. It's a lot. I think I told you before. She plays sort of like a messy character, which she is, which she actually does really really well. And she gets caught up with this guy who's like this tech billionaire, who's incredibly controlling. Imagine that, right?
Right.
Um, and so yeah, it's just I think it's about maybe 8 or 9 episodes. It's just really strange, quirky, in some ways kind of scary, but it's fun, and she's good in it.
That sounds fantastic. We do have a question in the chat, and it happens to be a question I also have. Stormy says, super late to the party, bad weather just passed over me. You're fine, Stormy. I had to retweet the link because we were streaming to an entirely different link. So actually, you're really on time if you think about it. Stormy asks, who is watching The Ultimatum? I think we already know my answer. So Kate and Carey, how about we get your answers?
No, I don't even know what the Ultimatum is.
Same. I don't know what it is either.
I
I
am
know
so
the end
glad
game.
you
I don't know
asked.
the ultimatum.
I'm so glad you asked me to go in great depth about what the ultimatum is. I would be so happy to do so. So, the Ultimatum is a garbage reality show on Netflix, but there's an additional layer to it. Now, here's something that most romantic reality shows have in common, and that's that it's just like a bunch of like ridiculously hot strangers that meet each other, and then they do like blah, 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 movie magic, kiss and fall in love, blah, 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 that kind of thing, right? And then, you know, the worst people you know who also are like the hottest people you know all like try to fall in love as if they're not all narcissists, right? Here's the twist with the ultimatum. It is couples that go on this. Couples who've been together for like a year or more, most of them like 2 years or more. And one member of the couple has, gag, issued an ultimatum that the other one has to marry them or move on. Now, you'll be shocked, or perhaps not, to know that these are people who are like 23. Like this is not that couple who's been like together for 10 years and they're like, why won't she marry me? Why won't he marry me? Like we've been living together for 7 years. We're basically it's not that. No. These are like very young 20s who are like, marry me now because we've been together for 2 years since we were 19 or whatever, right? You'll also be shocked to know they're the worst people ever. They are just garbaggio, just trash. They're mostly hot for what it's worth. Not as hot as like Bachelorette type of vibes where it's just like hot singles. This is like a couple. So like in any given couple, you know, sometimes you get your winners and you got your losers. You know what I mean? Like there's okay, you know, they're all reasonably attractive, but so some of them you got to squint a bit. So they go on the show with like 5 other couples or whatever the situation is, and they have to figure out two things. Do they actually want to get married, and do they want to get married to this person? So they have like a 3-week trial marriage to one of the other spouses, and then they have a 3-week trial marriage with the person they came with, and that's supposed to help them figure. It's crazy, but recall, this isn't supposed to be logical, and these are not supposed to be good people. Their trial marriage with like essentially a stranger is supposed to help them figure out, like, do you want marriage? Do you like, which is like living together, blah blah blah, that kind of thing, which is not what marriage is, but like whatever, logic has no place here. Then the trial marriage with the person they came with is supposed to help them figure out, do you want marriage with this person? At the end of it, the person who received the ultimatum in the couple either has to agree to get either propose or be proposed to, depending on the situation. They're all heterosexual couples, so it's very heteronormative. Like if the girl was the one who received the ultimatum, she has to say yes to a proposal. If the guy was the one who received the ultimatum, he has to propose. You know what I mean? Let's all cringe. It's 2022 and we're still going through this, but whatever. Anyways, at the end, everybody is just absolutely trash garbage. Like not a single one of these couples should have worked out. The one that was most toxic not only got, well, let me not give spoilers. How far are you? Anyways, none of the couples should have stayed together. Some of them did under complete garbage situations. One girl who went on this, that was like, she was like, I'm so wifey. Like I do all the wife things. Like I'm the what I like. She was like, she didn't even want her guy looking at another girl. She was the only one to initiate sex with the person in her trial marriage. Like other than that, there's no like living in sin and fornication in the show, except for one girl who was the like talking up. It's so bad. Watch it. I want like 7 more seasons. Stormy
I just have
says,
one question.
yes, go ahead.
What does this practice marriage entail? I mean, are they actually, do they have to do stuff, or is it just, hey, live in this place for 3 weeks?
You're supposed to live together. You're supposed to take care of your pets together. Pretty much all of them, I think, had pets. So they're supposed to like, they share like dog walking duties. They do actually continue to work at their jobs. So making your spouse coffee before work, or like going to family gatherings together. It's a very superficial idea of like what marriage is, but they are not instructed or coached to like have like sexual physical intimacy with their trial spouse. They live in like a 2-bedroom apartment, so they don't actually even have to they definitely have like a couch too. Those who didn't want to share a bed didn't have to share a bed, so it's not like the sexual intimacy was forced. Some of them just chose to kind of push that line a little bit just to like sensationalize it, but only one of the trial couples actually like dabbled beyond like a light little peck for the camera. And that was the one who talked the biggest game about like she issued the ultimatum. She brought her guy on there. And then anyways, they're just the most garbage people you've ever seen. So good. Watch it.
Kate.exe has stopped working. That's called roommates.
What happened?
I said that's called roommates.
Oh, yes. No, there's no like logical understanding of what marriage is. Let's be clear. No, absolutely not.
Like I can't first of all, just for reference, if they're supposed to be like 22, 23, 24, I'm 22. I am what I would say a average 22-year-old behaves like. Their thought processes. I'm flawed and have imperfectly flexible. But like, what?
Right. Well, first of all, there's nothing average about you, Kate, but I understand your sentiment that it is far too early in their, number of rotations around the sun for them to be this desperate. And if you have to issue your partner an ultimatum, that's not your partner, the answer is no, like you've answered it yourself. But it makes for such good television. They're there to entertain me, not to get a healthy relationship out of it. And we got exactly what we needed. I got entertained and they did not get a healthy relationship. Stormy says they meet each other's friends and family, which is just nuts. It is just nuts. But again, it's very entertaining to see their friends and family talk shit about their actual real like partner of 2 years behind said partner's back because they're temporarily with another partner. And I'm like, y'all should break up. Like, you shouldn't be with a stranger, but you should break up. And most of them do. Stormy says you guys mentioned season 9 possibly being Flash's last. I know the guy playing Joe isn't coming back. Candace wants to do fewer episodes, put the show out of its misery. I did hear that, and I know Joe isn't returning. We talked about that very briefly, that there might be an abbreviated season 9 of The Flash. I literally don't know how Candace could do fewer episodes. They already don't give her any screen time and she's never in Star City, but I guess it's possible. I don't know. Yeah. Well, guys, we are at 10 p.m. and we did not get to the segment of what we read this week. And that's okay, because I can save that for another week. Do you have any parting thoughts? Any words of wisdom? Any final plugs?
I do. Join the Renew Legends of Tomorrow Twitter Mafia because we need a season 8.
Legends of Tomorrow needs a season 8 more than Flash needs a season 9. So they should do a little swapsies.
Thank
Yes,
you.
I agree. I'm just going to go ahead and say that I've told Carey this week, but I experienced one of the best fictional female friendships through a D&D like improv show, and it was a spiritual moment. Okay, so if you just want like good female friendships represented in surprising ways, just go watch the last episode of Critical Role. That's all I can tell you. Thank you.
I appreciated just hearing about it. And maybe someday I'll dive into Critical Role once I've caught up on Riverdale, another notable place to find female friendships when they're not killing each other with baked goods. Well, guys, this was very fun. I am very happy that through the force of technical magic, I saved the live stream throughout this process. I feel good about that. You know, that's an accomplishment for this week. And with that, I bid you farewell, and I will see you again, and maybe we'll get to what we read this week some other week. Bye.
Fantastic. Take it easy.